thank you for joining me. My name is Jeff. I am an alcoholic, a drug addict, a codependent, a reformed criminal with PTSD and bipolar disorder in recovery. And this podcast is called How It Works. And you have named it. I've coined the phrase after an expression from the original 12-step recovery group, Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the readings that is key to our recovery. And I'm just going to get right into that reading, and then the rest of the show I'm going to explain the basics of recovery and why recovery is important and how it might work for you depending on your situation. So right into the reading, here it goes. This is how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us had tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked for his protection and care, and with complete abandon, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. And I'm going to stop there. So the rest of the reading goes on to recite the 12 steps of recovery, and then it closes with an explanation that we could not have managed our alcoholism without the aid of higher power. And this is one of the things that throws a lot of people and scares people off from 12-step recovery, because there's this concept of a higher power. And a lot of people don't agree on that. Some people don't believe there is a God, and other people have different definitions of God that don't necessarily align with a Christian God. And the original 12 steps, the original AA, was more Christian than it is today. They changed the wording to make it more open to people of all different faiths. So the idea with recovery is that you don't have to have any specific God, but you need to have a sense of a higher power. And what I'd like to suggest is that peace be that higher power. That there's a part of each of us that is always healthy, that is all-knowing, that is ever-present, that is peaceful, humble, kind, and knows exactly what to do at all times. And that part of us is the healthiest thing that we have, and it's when we connect with this sense of inner peace. And anything that's not peaceful falls under this different category, a thing we call ego. Ego is your logic, will, and desire. It's the things that make your personality. It's the things that make you human. But in reality, each of us is just consciousness. We're pure consciousness, and we're always peaceful and we're always healthy. So being able to tap into that consciousness to help guide you back to a healthy frame of mind is really key for your recovery. And for many people that comes from a sense of connection to God, but you don't absolutely have to have a belief in a higher power, a belief in a deity. You can just believe in peace. Everybody can be peaceful, so there's no reason to fight it. Now, what I'd like to suggest with this podcast is that the things that are true for alcoholics are actually true for most people. That when we're in an addiction of any kind, we're treating our traumas. And Alcoholics Anonymous simply define these traumas as resentments and character defects. Now, resentment is something that's wildly misunderstood. Resentment is any thought, any experience that you've had from the past that gets resent, and every time it's sent, it delivers a negative message. It upsets you in some way. It either makes you angry or depressed or both. And character defects are the reasons why. So an example would be, I have a young man who used to work for me, and while he was working for me, I enabled him quite a bit. I loaned him a lot of money, I gave him a lot of money, and then when I needed money and I asked him for it, he wouldn't pay me back. So when I think of that, it upsets me. It upsets me that he's different than I am. And I label him and I judge him and I say that he's a lying, cheating, backstabbing, narcissistic jerk. Okay, well, those are all my qualities. Those are qualities in me that I see in him that I can't stand about myself. And that's what judgment is. Whenever we're labeling another person, well, there's this law in Buddhism that explains that we only ever see ourselves in other people. So it's not that person that I'm judging, it's the me that I see in that person. And the reason I can't accept that person is because I don't accept those qualities in myself. So that's resentments and character defects. And what the founders of AA discovered is that working with a sponsor, going through the steps, we're able to resolve these traumas, these character defects and resentments. And when we do, we reach higher and higher levels of acceptance. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And it's true. It's a universal truth. It's true for me, for you, for everybody. The more acceptance we have, the healthier we are, and the more we see life as it is and not how we want it to be. Reaching acceptance is an emotional experience, and it's something that I discovered while I was in recovery. I feel that the Kubler-Ross model of grieving is flat out wrong because it misses a stage and it combines elements. So I'll explain. The original Kubler-Ross model of grieving states that the stages of grieving are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. My model of grieving is different. It's based on my experience in recovery. It says that the stages are denial, bargaining, surrender, acceptance. So there's only 4 stages. And anger and depression are emotions, and those emotions are part of the bargaining stage of grieving. And when we get to surrender, we surrender to our feelings. They're overwhelming, and they cause us to break down and often cry. And so when we reach surrender, we're letting something go, and we're learning the opposite of what we want. Because while we're holding on to an idea, we're still in a form of denial, and we're suffering with it. And once we let it go and accept that we're not going to get what we want, then we can reach acceptance where we're once again peaceful, and we gain emotional intelligence, and we gain empathy and understanding. So I was able to admit that I was an alcoholic for a very long time. My first experience with AA was in 1989, and I was able to admit that I was an alcoholic. But I looked around, I listened to the stories of the other people sharing, and I thought to myself, well, I'm not as bad as those guys. And so I made an excuse to not attend AA, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I was willing to put down the bottle, about 30 years. Now, what had happened is I was able to admit that I was an alcoholic, but I wasn't really able to admit that it was unmanageable. I thought I could control my alcoholism, which is a ridiculous alcoholic thought. And the truth is, I could not control my drinking. Sometimes I'd get favorable results. Sometimes I could just have a few drinks and then quit. But other times I couldn't. And I never knew which times those were. It was unpredictable. It was just whatever happened. And, there were times where I was definitely trying to get drunk, and even that is very alcoholic. If you're trying to get drunk, you're trying to escape your traumas. What traumas? Your resentments and character defects. The things that inhibit you. So people say that when they drink, they escape their inhibitions, that they become more comfortable, that they're more talkative, they're more friendly. Why? Because they're taking a break from resentments and character defects. And so alcoholics have a predisposition for this. I was alcoholic before I started drinking. If it wasn't alcohol, it would have been a different addiction, and it has been. I have several different addictions, and I'm still working on some of them. All right, so now we get to the idea of what the recovery is, and I want to explain that having a sponsor in recovery is very important. What a sponsor is somebody who has been through the steps, who has experienced the spiritual awakening. They've gained the awareness that comes with working the steps. They have more acceptance, and now there's someone safe for you to talk to. That's the premise. It's not always true because, well, we're all in denial about something. And even going through the steps one time is no guarantee that we're going to clean out all of our negative behaviors. It's a life process, really. And in the words of Bill W., the creator, one of the creators of AA, we are never cured of alcoholism. What happens is we're granted a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And this maintenance means that we have to be fearlessly honest at all times, and that we need to clean house, serve others. And that's really important. There's this concept in recovery, the Holy Trinity. It's unity, recovery, service. So to keep AA, to keep the benefits of recovery, we need to pass on the message. We need to serve other people. And in doing so, we remind ourselves of the reasons why we're in recovery. And it's a self-propagating process. So when we're working with a sponsor, and again, I'm suggesting that this is something that can benefit anyone who has any kind of trauma whatsoever. So, no matter what your situation is, whether you have severe mental illness, or you have different addictions, or you've been in toxic relationships, or you've just had a hard time in life, these 12 steps can benefit you because talking about your traumas is one of the ways to release yourself from the control. Because trauma is something that's trapped in our systems, and letting it go requires a combination of crying, complaining, and confessing. And we need to do this in a safe atmosphere. So again, that's the point of a sponsor, somebody who's safe to talk to. Sponsors are not here to diagnose. They're not here to treat. They're not here to give advice. They just are here to listen, to share confessions, and to explain how it works, to explain how recovery works and what recovery options they use to benefit themselves. And it's a take it or leave it situation. You're not expected or required to take any of these suggestions. It's just that, we're here to share them and let you know. For example, for me, morning prayer and evening prayer is very important. It's a part of my lifestyle now. If I miss it in the morning, if I somehow forget, then I start to get a little jittery throughout the day because my body knows. My body knows that I haven't done what I need to take care of myself, to keep myself grounded and peaceful. So these are the suggestions that I would make to someone. I would suggest if you have a belief in God, pray in the morning, pray at night, and pray for specific things. When I pray, I express gratitude, I ask for guidance, and I ask to have things taken from me. And that willingness expressed in prayer is part of how I'm retraining my mind to let things go, to let go of my character defects and resentments. Because I don't want to let them go. My ego wants to hold on to these things. It wants to be right. It wants to be righteous. And only through the process of recovery have I been able to really resolve any of my past issues. I can forget about my past issues. I can stop thinking about them. But that doesn't resolve them. That just means that they're dormant and not in my focus. And every time something that happens in my life reminds me of one of these past traumas, I have what is called a trauma response. I get angry. And sometimes I act out, and I'll yell at people, and I'll curse, and I'll do negative things that have a negative impact on my life. But if I resolve the traumas and identify the character defects and realize, okay, these are my issues and I don't want to have them anymore, through prayer and willingness, I can slowly let go of the tendency of having negative behaviors, and eventually they're replaced with something positive, something useful that is more appealing to me and the people around me. So that's my suggestion, and that's the basics of recovery. And I'm not going to go on too much longer. It's we'll keep these to about 15-20 minutes. But that's the basic premises of recovery. And if you have questions, if you are struggling with addiction, depression, anxiety, fears, stress, feel free to reach out to me, because I'll be happy to answer your questions and hopefully point you in a direction that'll be positive and have a positive impact on your life. So again, my name is Jeff. The show is How It Works, and I appreciate your time and thank you for joining me.